Starbucks without somebody arresting you is crazy to me.
Starbucks in damage control today after two black men waiting for a colleague were arrested at one of the coffee shops in Philly this weekend. The CEO calls what happened to them reprehensible. Good afternoon. Welcome to Monday. I'm Michaela Pereira. Before we get to that big story, we start with a look at our headlines. An American woman has won the Boston Marathon for the first time in 33 years. Des Linden took the title this morning, even after she stopped to help one of her fellow competitors. A man from Japan won the men's division. First time a Japanese man has won since 1987. The fire at Trump Tower in New York City 9 days ago was an accident caused by overloaded power strips. That is from a source close to the investigation. Reportedly, there was not a smoke alarm installed in the 50th floor apartment where the fire started. The man who lived there in the apartment was killed. 6 firefighters were injured. A sad update now to pass on in the story of a family that disappeared on a road trip in Northern California. Over the weekend, rescuers were able to recover 3 bodies from what was a flooded river. They've identified the remains as 3 members of the Thottapilli family. They went missing during a very heavy rainstorm. Our big story today, the CEO of Starbucks is pledging to make it right after 2 African-American men were arrested at one of their stores in Philadelphia. The pair were accused of trespassing. They said they were waiting for a colleague to meet them.
What did they get called for? Because there are 2 black guys sitting here meeting me? Yes. Well, what did they do? What did they do? Someone tell me what they did.
The NAACP is blasting the incident, calling it, quote, another ominous signal on the increasingly dangerous environment for African Americans, adding that, quote, the Starbucks situation provides dangerous insight regarding the failure of our nation to take implicit bias seriously. The CEO of Starbucks says that bias is something he is taking seriously. Kevin Johnson spoke with ABC News this morning.
More training that we're going to do with our store managers, not only around the guidelines, but training around unconscious bias. What happened to those 2 gentlemen was wrong.
The former mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, joins me now. Always a delight to speak to you, sir. I think a lot of people are shaking their heads. And I think you, who know Philly so very well, a place that you were mayor of for some time, what are your thoughts on the incident that happened there?
Well, first, Michaela, and thanks again for having me. Now as a private citizen, but let me say, as a citizen of Philadelphia, I want to apologize to the 2 gentlemen for what happened to them, for their experience, and for the terrible outcome. This is not the Philadelphia that we know and love. This is not representative of the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. This was very bad judgment by the store employee. Kevin Johnson has made some very strong statements and committed to reviewing the policy. He's taken responsibility, didn't throw his employee under the bus, and wants to better understand what kind of policy would lead to this kind of outcome. It makes no sense whatsoever. Your intro, I think, or the voiceover, talked about them being trespassing. As best I can tell, trespassing is usually when you're, in a place where you don't have permission to be. They're going into a store, and as indicated, we're waiting for someone. I mean, people do this, morning, noon, and night at a variety of places. And so I don't want folks to think that this is how we function day to day here in the city. And so the first mistake was for the manager to call the police in the first place. This is one of these cases where you can just talk this out. You can talk this through to better understand what's going on. The video is kind of from afar, but as best I could see, and I've watched it pretty closely, these 2 guys are, talking to the officers, I think 3 initially and then 4 for at least a good 5 minutes or so, back and forth conversation. No one seems agitated. No one seems to be aggressive. It does not appear, it's hard to hear, that there was any kind of bad language or anything like that. I mean, they're just kind of going back and forth about this situation. So, their look, their demeanor, how they're acting. You can see their frustrated
friend arrive and sort of not understand what has happened here. It's been really interesting to watch the reaction from people. I saw comedian Wanda Sykes on Twitter kind of go off and say, that's what we do at Starbucks. It is a meeting place. That's what we do in America. Right. And then the other suggestion of, you know, the need for, you know, to train employees better to get rid of this implicit bias. Can you train away implicit bias in your experience?
I think you can certainly. I mean, I'm a big believer in training for whatever it is you're trying to train for, and certainly whether you can take something out of someone's mind or heart. I mean, I don't know that person. I don't know what was going on in their head, but you can certainly better sensitize people to things. But at the end, and I think Mr. Johnson might agree, I mean, this was just bad judgment. You know, and maybe that's hard to teach as well. I mean, it just should never have gotten to this place. I don't know what would drive someone to think that calling the police in this kind of situation is going to lead to a better outcome. And then apparently the person said, well, I didn't want them arrested. Well, you know, that's like calling the fire department and then complaining that, you know, there's water in your house. I mean, like, what are you talking about?
You know, one of the things I think that has been going on, we can see on the screen the protests that have been happening at that very Starbucks there in Philly. Some people are calling for a boycott. Some people are wanting heads to roll. We understand that that employee no longer works at that Starbucks. We don't know if they've been fired or relocated or what. But to me, you have to ask the question, is this a terrible manager? Is this just a person who really shouldn't have that job? Or does that speak to you about a bigger problem within Starbucks? I don't know that it's a bigger problem within Starbucks. What's your sense of it?
And I don't either, but I mean, I've, you know, paid a whole lot of attention to their activity, not only here in Philadelphia, but across the United States of America. If you go on their website, I mean, this is a company that prides itself in diversity, economic opportunity, hiring young people, being engaged in the community. I mean, they're working with City Year here in Philadelphia. They're working with Youth Build. They have scholarship programs. I mean, this is a serious organization. And so, you know, I'm not willing in any way, shape, or form to say that this singular incident, and I'm sure other people can talk about other incidents, but there's no way that Kevin Johnson, Rosalind Brewer, and the rest of the team condone this kind of activity. It goes completely against everything that the company has stated and has demonstrated time and time again, not just in Philadelphia, but across the United States of America. Sometimes people do not so smart things, and it shouldn't be in any way representative of an entire corporation.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Former mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter. Always a delight to have you. Thanks for sharing your expertise. Always former. We won't try to say that you're the current. You're a civilian now, sir.
No.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for joining me.
You too.
James Comey's book, A Higher Loyalty.